Welcome to the Full Spectrum Show. Today, we're going to take a quick look at Nvidia's new technology coming after its DLSS, or Deep Learning Supersampling, which has been quite an excellent technology on its own. And we actually have this article here by James Archer from Rock, Paper, Shotgun, and he's done quite a well job at putting some photos up that really break down the differences and also just talking about the differences in his article. So let's go ahead and check it out. So we can see that deep learning supersampling, and that is a beefy card. I'm not sure if that's a 3090 or a 3080, probably 3090 just by how thick that boy looks. So definitely a beefy card. But this is going to be really, really interesting to me because DLSS has already been such an impressive technology, and what DLSS does is it actually downscales an image so it's running at a lower resolution, and then it samples it back up using AI to your native resolution. So this new thing called DLDSR, gonna slaughter all of this. It's gonna be a bunch of verbal diarrhea today with all these freaking acronyms. Is deep learning dynamic super resolution. So it is exactly what it kind of sounds like. It's doing the opposite. So it's downsampling an upscaled image. So it's basically like super resolution in terms of you're putting into a resolution that's way higher than what your native display or monitor is actually being able to cast. And for me, if I ever had to, because of games that were just too lazy, which is, when things are blocky and stuff on especially curves and corners and things like that, to really smoothen those out, for me, I hate anti-aliasing. I just think it takes a whole image and just smudges everything all over it. It's so blurry, much more blurry than it needs to be. And I'd actually take aliasing over anti-aliasing because I'd rather have a few weird looking pixels in my screen than blur the whole freaking thing. That's just me personally. Obviously, everybody feels different about it. Some people, to their eye, it looks better being aliased, anti-aliased. Anyways, enough about my war against anti-aliasing because this might be a solution to anti-aliasing. My anti-aliasing. There we go. So, looking at standard, we can see that on a native to an actual standard super scaled image, there's definitely, you could see a little bit of aliasing, especially like up here on his head. And up here you can see that it's pretty smooth. It's basically what I'd imagine with anti-aliasing, except with any much really extra blur added to it. Now if we come down to this next one, this one's actually DLDSR. And this time, we could see quite a large difference. So, not only has those little aliasing jags gone mostly away, you just definitely can see a few here and there. Because, there's no overcoming the actual capability of your monitor if it's at 1080. But what we can see, especially in further images, is how much sharper it looks than even super resolution. I mean, the texture on the back wall here, look, you could see it's so much more blurry over here and how sharp and crisp it is over here. Even if we go up to this, you still get very similar effects on the back wall. So that's really impressive that it's being able to pull that much sharpness out of the image. Now what's really crazy about this is that supposedly you can be using DLSS and DLDSR at the same time. Now that just kind of makes my head spin, to be honest, because you're upscaling, downscaling, using AI to gain more frames from the upscaled image, and using AI to make that downscaled image look sharper. So I'm not sure which order these are working in, to be quite honest, but it's really crazy and hurts my head thinking about all the different resolution loops that it's going through to create this. And you'd think that would definitely lose more frames than not, but surprisingly, just with most things DLSS, it's gaining many frames for you. Frame rates, all those frame rates. Yeah, definitely. And this is really impressive stuff here. I can barely. I mean, they basically look the same to me. I mean, anywhere you look, the textures are sharp. And there's really no aliasing to be spoken of. Thankfully. Ugh. I hate aliasing, but not as much as anti-aliasing. I'd rather prefer sharp. And also, anti-aliasing takes a performance hit. So it's crazy that games like Battlefield require you to have anti-aliasing on at all times. It's mind-boggling that that's a requirement in any game, especially on PC, where you should just be able to turn off that setting. Especially in the recent Battlefields, at least in Battlefield 5 and, of course, 2042, or Betafield 2042, I should say, is why would you need it required on? I want to turn anti-aliasing off as often as possible. And hopefully with advent of technology like this, we can start seeing that actually happen. I'd much rather do this than anything else. Although playing in 4K means that you don't usually even need anti-aliasing, only a few circumstances. And DLSS is also quite excellent in it. So this is really interesting. I'm not sure if it's just God of War that has been specifically optimized for it. It does look like in this image, which has DLSS and DLDSR on at the same time compared to native, it's a lot harder to tell any differences. And maybe it's just the scene that they chose to take a picture of. Looking at textures and things like that, maybe the ground is a little bit sharper over here. You could see a few more cracks, I suppose. But yeah, it's hard to tell in this game for sure. But if it means getting rid of anti-aliasing, sign me up. Sign me up. Let me know what you think. Do you think this is going to be really awesome technology? Do you think it's anti-aliaser killer? It's anti-aliaser? Or do you think this is a gimmicky kind of thing? Do you even ever super sample games? I definitely rarely do, playing in 4K, but if I'm playing on lower resolutions and I have a beefy rig, I definitely have been known to, especially over anti-aliasing. So enough of my anti-aliasing. Thank you for joining us on the Full Spectrum Show. I'm signing off.